I cut my dad out of my life for 10 years after he cheated with my aunt. Years later, he shows up unannounced to meet his granddaughter. I'm Jesse, 31F, and I haven't spoken to my dad Dave, 58M, in over 10 years. It's a long and complicated story, but I feel like I need to share it to get some perspective. Growing up, we were the picture-perfect family. My dad was a high school history teacher, and my mom Lisa, 56F, was a pediatric nurse. They met in college. My mom was struggling with her anatomy class, and my dad, who was a teaching assistant, offered to tutor her. It was love at first study session, or so they always told us. They got married right after graduation and had me a few years later, followed by my brother Alex, 28M, 3 years after that. We lived in a cozy suburban house with a big backyard where Dad built us a treehouse. Every summer, we'd go camping in the mountains, and every winter, we'd have these epic snowball fights in our yard. Dad was always the fun one, coming up with crazy games and adventures. Mom was more practical, making sure we ate our vegetables and did our homework, but she had a great sense of humor too. One of my favorite childhood memories is from when I was about 9. Dad had this old beat-up guitar that he'd play sometimes. One day, he decided we should start a family band. He taught me some basic chords, Mom got a tambourine, and Alex banged on pots and pans. We were terrible, but we laughed so much. Our neighbors probably hated us, but we didn't care. As I got older, I started to notice how much my parents supported each other. Mom worked long shifts at the hospital, and Dad would always have dinner ready when she got home. When Dad was stressed about school budget cuts, Mom would surprise him with his favorite dessert or plan a weekend getaway. They seemed to have this unshakable bond. My Aunt Sarah, 52F, Mom's younger sister, was also a big part of our lives. She lived in the next town over with her husband Tom, 54M, and their kids, my cousins Emily, 14F, and Jack, 12M. We'd have big family dinners at least once a month, rotating between our houses. Sarah was always the life of the party, cracking jokes and getting everyone to play charades or karaoke. She and Dad seemed to have a special connection. They had the same goofy sense of humor and could banter for hours. Everything changed during my sophomore year of college. I was 20, studying psychology at a university about 2 hours from home. I loved college life, the freedom, the new friends, the challenging classes. But I always looked forward to coming home for breaks. That winter break started like any other. Mom picked me up from the train station, and we chatted about my classes and her work on the drive home. But when we got to the house, something felt off. Dad wasn't there to greet us with his usual bear hug and bad jokes. Mom said he was working late at school, grading papers before the break. Over the next few days, I noticed a tension in the house. Mom and Dad were barely speaking to each other, and when they did, it was in clipped, overly polite tones. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe they were just stressed about the holidays. It wasn't until a week into my break that I found out what was really going on. Mom sat me down one evening after Dad had gone out. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. That's when she told me, Dad had been having an affair with Aunt Sarah for the past 3 years. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. But Mom showed me the evidence, text messages she'd found on Dad's phone. Explicit, loving messages that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. Apparently, Dad had forgotten to delete them before coming home one day. The affair had been going on right under our noses. All those family dinners, holiday gatherings, summer barbecues, they'd been sneaking around, betraying not just Mom and Uncle Tom, but all of us. I was in shock. I felt like my whole childhood had been a lie. All those memories of our happy family suddenly seemed tainted. How could Dad do this to us? How could Aunt Sarah? The next few days were a blur. Dad moved out to give us some space. Mom alternated between crying and angry outbursts. I tried to be there for her, but I was struggling to process everything myself. When I finally confronted Dad, his excuses made me sick. He said he and Mom had grown apart, that Sarah understood him in a way Mom didn't anymore. He tried to tell me it wasn't about the sex, but about emotional connection. As if that made it any better. The fallout was catastrophic. Uncle Tom found out and was devastated. My cousins were confused and hurt. The extended family was split, with some people taking sides and others trying to stay neutral. It was like a bomb had gone off in the middle of our lives. I went back to college after break, but I couldn't focus on my studies. My grades started slipping, and I withdrew from my friends. I couldn't bear to talk about what was happening at home. Meanwhile, Alex was having an even harder time. He started acting out at school, getting into fights and skipping classes. Mom was too wrapped up in her own pain to really deal with it. Over the next few months, things got worse. Dad moved in with Sarah, who had left Uncle Tom. They seemed to think that now that everything was out in the open, we'd all just accept their relationship and move on. They couldn't understand why we were so hurt and angry. I tried to be there for Mom as much as I could, coming home on weekends to help around the house and just sit with her. She fell into a deep depression, barely leaving her room some days. She had to take a leave of absence from work. It was heartbreaking to see this strong, caring woman so broken. As for me, I couldn't bear to look at Dad or Aunt Sarah. The betrayal cut too deep. I blocked both of their numbers and removed them from all my social media. The last conversation I had with Dad was a screaming match where I told him he was dead to me. I meant it. That was over 10 years ago. Since then, a lot has changed. Mom eventually got back on her feet. She threw herself into her work, got a promotion to head nurse, and even started traveling. A few years ago, she began dating again, nothing serious, but it was good to see her smiling again. Alex had a rougher time. He dropped out of high school for a while, but eventually got his GED and went to community college. Now he's doing well as a software engineer and has a steady girlfriend. As for me, I finished college, barely, those first few semesters after the affair really tanked my GPA, and went on to get my master's in social work. I met my husband Mark, 33M, at a charity run 5 years ago. We got married last year in a small ceremony. Mom was there, beaming with pride. Dad and Sarah weren't invited. Now, I'm expecting my first child. It should be the happiest time of my life, and in many ways, it is. But Dad's absence is weighing on me more than ever. Over the years, he's made several attempts to reach out. He sent letters, tried to contact me through mutual friends, and even showed up at my college graduation, which I had explicitly told him not to do. Each time, I shut him down. Last week, I received another letter from him. He wrote that he's been sober for 2 years. Apparently, he developed a drinking problem after everything blew up, and has been going to counseling. He said he deeply regrets what he did and wants to make amends. He asked if we could meet to talk, just the two of us. Part of me wants to tear up the letter and continue ignoring him as I have for the past decade. But another part wonders if I should hear him out. I've never really given him a chance to explain or apologize properly. And with a baby on the way, I can't help but think about family and what kind of relationship I want my child to have with their grandfather. I'm torn and don't know what to do. The hurt and anger are still there, but so is a tiny spark of the love I used to feel for my dad. Should I agree to meet with him? Or should I continue to keep him out of my life? Any advice would be appreciated. Update 1: It's been about a month since my last post, and I wanted to give an update on my situation with my dad. First, I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. It really helped me gain some perspective on things. After a lot of thought and discussions with my husband Mark and my mom, I decided to meet with my dad. We agreed to meet at a small cafe in town, neutral ground where we could talk privately but still be in public. I arrived at the cafe early, my stomach in knots. When my dad walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. The man I remembered as confident and put together now looked frail and much older than his 58 years. His hair had gone completely gray, and there were deep lines around his eyes and mouth that I didn't remember. As soon as he sat down, he started apologizing. He admitted that what he did was unforgivable and that he had spent years trying to understand why he made such a terrible choice. He talked about how he had been struggling with depression and a sort of midlife crisis, feeling stuck in his job and unsure about his place in the world. But he emphasized that these weren't excuses, just context. He told me about his journey to sobriety, how he had hit rock bottom a few years after the affair came to light. He lost his job due to his drinking, nearly lost his license after a DUI, and ended up in the hospital with alcohol poisoning. It was a wake-up call, and he's been sober ever since. I listened quietly, letting him speak without interruption. When he finished, I told him how his actions had affected me, Alex, and especially Mom. I didn't hold back in expressing the pain and anger I had carried for years. I told him about the nights I spent comforting Mom, about how Alex had nearly thrown away his future, about how I had struggled to trust anyone in relationships for years after. To his credit, my dad didn't try to defend himself. He acknowledged the hurt he had caused and said he would spend the rest of his life trying to make amends if given the chance. He also shared some news about his relationship with Sarah. Apparently, it had ended years ago. Once the excitement of the affair wore off, they realized they had destroyed their families for something that wasn't real. Sarah had moved to another state, and they hadn't spoken in years. After our meeting, I felt conflicted. On one hand, it was cathartic to finally express my feelings to him directly. On the other hand, seeing him so broken and remorseful stirred up emotions I thought I had buried long ago. Part of me wanted to hug him like I used to when I was a little girl, but another part still recoiled at the thought of being close to him. I told him I needed time to process everything before making any decisions about our future relationship. He respected that and said he would wait as long as it took. Since then, I've had long talks with Mom and Alex about the situation. Surprisingly, Mom encouraged me to consider giving Dad a second chance. She said that while she could never be with him again, she had found peace and didn't want me to carry around anger and resentment. Alex was more hesitant, but he said he would support whatever decision I made. I've also been thinking a lot about my own experiences as a social worker. I've worked with families torn apart by infidelity, addiction, and other issues. I've seen some heal and come back together, while others were never able to move past the hurt. It's made me realize that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to forgiveness and reconciliation. For now, I've decided to take small steps. I've unblocked Dad's number, and we've exchanged a few text messages. Nothing deep, just checking in. It's not much, but it's more contact than we've had in a decade. As for the future, I'm still unsure. The thought of Dad meeting my child both excites and terrifies me. I worry about getting hurt again, about letting him back into my life only for him to disappoint us once more. But I also think about the good memories I have with him, and I wonder if it's possible to build new ones. I've started seeing a therapist to help me work through these complex emotions. She's been helping me understand that forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean forgetting or excusing what happened. It's more about releasing the hold that anger and resentment have on me. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm focusing on my pregnancy, on building a home with Mark, and on maintaining the strong relationships I have with Mom and Alex. Whatever happens with Dad, I know I have a solid support system around me. I'll keep you all updated on how things progress. Thank you again for all your support during this difficult time. Update 2. Hello everyone. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some developments in my situation with my dad. After our initial meeting and subsequent text exchanges, we've been slowly rebuilding our relationship. We've had a few more face-to-face meetings, always in public places. Each time, we've talked more openly about the past and our feelings. One particularly emotional conversation happened when my dad opened up about his struggles with alcohol after the affair came to light. He shared some pretty dark stories about that time, how he'd wake up in strange places, not remembering how he got there, how he'd drink to numb the guilt and shame he felt. He admitted that he had contemplated suicide at his lowest point. It was hard to hear, but it helped me understand why he hadn't fought harder to reconnect with me earlier. He simply wasn't in a place where he could. As my pregnancy has progressed, I'm now in my 3rd trimester, my dad has expressed his desire to be involved in his grandchild's life. This led to some serious discussions between me, Mark, and my mom. We all agreed that if my dad was going to be part of the baby's life, we needed to establish clear boundaries. We decided to invite my dad to our house for dinner, along with my mom, Alex, and his girlfriend. It was the first time we had all been in the same room in over a decade. The tension was palpable at first. Mom and Dad barely looked at each other, and Alex was unusually quiet. But as the evening went on, things became more relaxed. We shared some laughs over old family stories, and for a moment, it almost felt like old times. Seeing my parents interact civilly, even warmly at times, was surreal but reassuring. After dinner, Mark and I sat down with my dad to discuss our expectations moving forward. We made it clear that while we were open to him being in our lives, trust would need to be rebuilt slowly. We also established ground rules about his involvement with the baby, including supervised visits only for the foreseeable future. My dad agreed to all our terms without hesitation. He said he was grateful for any opportunity to be part of our lives and would respect whatever boundaries we set. He also shared that he's been volunteering at a local youth center, mentoring teens from troubled backgrounds. It seems like he's really trying to turn his life around and give back to the community. As for my relationship with my dad, it's still a work in progress. There are moments when I feel close to him again, like when he helped me set up the nursery last weekend. We fell into an easy rhythm, assembling furniture and talking about nothing in particular, just like we used to. But there are also times when the pain of his betrayal resurfaces, and I find myself pulling away. My therapist has been helping me navigate these complex emotions. She's encouraged me to acknowledge my feelings without judgment and to be patient with myself as I work through this process of potential reconciliation. One positive outcome of all this is that it's brought me closer to Alex. We've had many late-night phone calls discussing our feelings about Dad, supporting each other as we both try to figure out what kind of relationship we want with him going forward. Alex has even started to consider reaching out to Dad himself, though he's not quite ready yet. As my due date approaches, I find myself feeling cautiously optimistic about the future. While I don't think things will ever be the same as they were before the affair, I'm hopeful that we can build a new kind of family dynamic, one based on honesty, respect, and the understanding that second chances are precious. I'll update again after the baby is born. Thank you all for your continued support and advice through this journey. Update 3. Hello everyone. It's been a while since my last update, and a lot has happened. Our baby girl, Sophia, was born 2 months ago, and she's absolutely perfect. Becoming a mother has been an incredible experience, filled with joy, exhaustion, and more love than I ever thought possible. Having a newborn has also brought new challenges to my relationship with my dad. He's been eager to be involved, constantly asking to visit and help out. While I appreciate his enthusiasm, it's also been overwhelming at times. There was a particularly tense moment a few weeks after Sophia was born. My dad showed up unannounced at our house, arms full of baby gifts. While his intentions were good, it violated the boundaries we had set about supervised visits. Mark was furious, and I was upset too. We had to have a serious talk with my dad about respecting our rules and understanding that rebuilding trust takes time. To his credit, my dad was extremely apologetic. He admitted that his excitement had gotten the better of him and promised it wouldn't happen again. Since then, he's been much more respectful of our boundaries, always calling before visiting and checking if we need anything. Watching my dad with Sophia has been complicated. On one hand, seeing the love and tenderness in his eyes when he holds her melts my heart. It reminds me of the dad I knew growing up, the one who would read me bedtime stories and cheer the loudest at my soccer games. He's even started singing her the same silly songs he used to sing to me and Alex when we were little. But on the other hand, I can't help but think about how he betrayed our family, and I worry about him potentially hurting Sophia in the future. My mom has been an incredible support through all of this. She's been staying with us to help with the baby, and seeing her interact with my dad, who visits when invited, has been interesting. There's still tension between them, but they're civil and even friendly at times for Sophia's sake. Last week, I overheard them reminiscing about the day I was born. It was bittersweet to hear them laughing together, knowing everything that's happened. As for my own feelings, they continue to be a mix of hope and caution. I'm glad that Sophia will know her grandfather, but I'm also protective. I'm learning that forgiveness is a process, not a single act. Some days I feel like I've completely forgiven my dad, and other days the old anger and hurt resurface. Like when I was changing Sophia's diaper the other day and suddenly remembered how Dad missed Alex's high school graduation because he was with Sarah. It's moments like these that remind me how far we still have to go. My brother Alex has also been making an effort to reconnect with Dad. He and his girlfriend are expecting their first child later this year, which has motivated Alex to work on healing our family relationships. He's had a few one-on-one meetings with Dad, and while they've been awkward, Alex says they're getting better each time. Seeing him navigate his own path to forgiveness has been both inspiring and comforting. Mark has been my rock through all of this. He's been incredibly patient and understanding, even when I wake him up in the middle of the night to talk through my conflicted feelings about Dad. He's also been great at enforcing boundaries when I'm too tired or emotional to do so myself. For now, we're taking things day by day. My dad is proving his commitment to being a better person and a good grandfather. He's maintained his sobriety, continues with his counseling, and respects our boundaries. He's even offered to babysit when we're ready, though we're not quite there yet. While our relationship may never be what it once was, we're building something new, a relationship based on honesty, respect, and the shared love for little Sophia. It's not perfect, and there are still moments of doubt and tension, but it's progress. Thank you all for being part of this journey with me. Your support and advice have been invaluable. Becoming a mother has taught me a lot about love, forgiveness, and the importance of family, both the ones we're born into and the ones we choose. While the road hasn't been easy, I'm cautiously optimistic about what the future holds for all of us. I'll keep you updated if anything significant changes. For now, I'm trying to focus on enjoying these precious early months with Sophia and navigating this new chapter in our family's story.